Hello YouTube, Sir Dragon X here, and welcome to Retired Life in Mexico. No bull. So, you've decided to move to Mexico, or you're seriously contemplating it. So what's next? Where do I live? What considerations should I take into account? Well, we're going to cover that in a video coming up next. Coming to you from the beautiful city of San Miguel de Allende. The key to a pain-free transition to living in Mexico is planning. We moved on a whim, and luckily it worked out the best for us. But it didn't come without its aches and pains, here and there. I saw firsthand how it can become a disaster without planning and research. Research is the key factor to finding your ideal spot. And even if you have found your ideal spot, or absolutely fall in love with that spot, research is still key to making your transition to life in Mexico. If I had it to do all over again, I would consider the following factors in my research. Some of these things may seem trivial, but remember, you are moving to a totally different country and culture. The first thing I would consider is climate. Mexico has a wide array of climates. It goes anywhere from hot and humid to dry and cool. Why do I mention this? Because many of you may live in a cold climate and want to move to a very warm climate. Or maybe you're trying to escape the hot and humid climate, like I was in South Texas, where it was very hot and humid. So, climate's a very important factor. Next, altitude. San Miguel de Allende is approximately 6,500 feet above sea level. I grew up and I was moved from a place that was sea level. It took some time to get used to. And also, many people have health conditions where altitude could be a factor. So, when you do your research, find out what is the altitude of the place you want to live. Next is cost of living. Yes, I will admit, Mexico is cheaper to live in, and many of us are looking for an alternative. You can actually live here on Social Security, but I will tell you that the cost of living varies from place to place. There are some places that are very affordable and some places that are not as affordable. So cost of living is something that you should definitely look into, especially when you are on a budget. The next is the distance and your access to home. Why do I say this? Because you're going to have to eventually return home, maybe to visit family, maybe for a medical emergency. The things to take into consideration is, wherever you live, is there an international airport? What's the closest airport? How long will it take you to get home if you fly home? How much are tickets to fly home? And if you live in the northern part of Mexico, such as Monterrey, how far of a drive is it to your home? Because when I lived in South Texas, I was only 2.5 hours away from Monterrey. So distance is definitely an important factor. The next is medical care. Many of you, such as myself, have pre-existing medical conditions. The medical care here in Mexico is outstanding. But you have to remember that here in Mexico you have a private medical system and a public medical system. And usually your better hospitals and your better medical care is going to be in the larger metropolitan areas. For example, here in San Miguel de Allende, if I need anything, I travel to Queretaro. Or, since I have family in Monterrey, I usually have all my medical stuff done in Monterrey. But other areas don't have access to the medical care that I have access to here, or maybe in other areas. Also, medical care in places such as Cancun, they specialize in stitching people up, urgent cares, not necessarily for major medical problems. So those are the things that you need to look into, is what kind of access are you going to have to medical care in case of an emergency. And last but not least, transportation. I'm going to be covering this in another video, but are you going to be bringing your vehicle from the United States? Yes, there is a way of bringing your vehicle in the United States, and there is a certain way to do that, but it also comes with its limitations. Also, depending on where you live, for example, here in San Miguel de Allende, a lot of people live in the downtown area where it's very hard to park a car or even have a car, and everything's within walking distance. And some people just don't want to have a car at all and want to be able to be within walking distance of everything. So you need to take that into consideration. Also, the public transportation systems in certain areas is very, very good, very accessible, and very inexpensive. So that's another thing to look into. Remember, Google and Facebook are your friends. There's a ton of Facebook groups for expats living in Mexico. A quick search on both these platforms will yield a lot of results. Don't be shy. Post in the various groups and ask questions of places you're interested in. These Facebook groups have become a support system for us and very useful to browse if you're looking into living in a certain area. To this day, I do research or ask questions in these Facebook groups on a daily basis. One of the hardest, or sometimes like in my case, the easiest decisions to make when moving to Mexico is where to live. What I will do today is list several popular locations expats gravitate to. This is not a full list, but it's a good place to start. If I leave any places out, please feel free to add them to the comment section in this video. I will break these down based on what I like to call regions of Mexico. The first region that I'd like to talk about is major cities and metropolitan areas. The two major cities that I'm going to list here is Mexico City and Monterrey. These two cities are where most expats gravitate towards. Mexico City is in the central part of Mexico, and Monterrey is in the northeastern part of Mexico, about 2.5 hours south of the Texas-Mexico border. Then I'd like to move on to Baja California. That's on the western part of Mexico, and that's the little boot that's underneath California. And there we have Encinada, La Paz, and Los Cobos. And then I move on to one of my favorite locations in Mexico, the Gulf Coast Caribbean area. This area is very famous for its beautiful beaches, white sands, and blue waters. In this area you have Cancun, Playa del Carmen, and Merida, and Tulum. A lot of expats like to live in this area. The next area is another coastal town, but it's on the coastal towns on the Pacific end, and that's going to be Puerto Vallarta. Puerto Vallarta is famous for being one of the first locations where expats started to gravitate towards when they started to move to Mexico many years ago. And you also have Puerto Escondido and Mazatlan. And then last but not least, you have the central part of Mexico. Of course, you have San Miguel de Allende, where I live, Queretaro, which is about 40 minutes away from us, Lake Chapala, Ajijic, and Morelia. Although Morelia, not many expats live there, there are still a small community of expats in Morelia. So now that I've given you a starting point, it's time to start your research and enjoy the beauty of Mexico and all it has to offer. I will leave you with this list of places that I mentioned in the description of the video, as I mentioned before. It's a good place to start your research. Now, coming in the next video, I will cover on the immigration requirements, different types of permissions, and qualifying factors. Once again, subscribe to my channel and don't miss any of my future videos. And hit that like button if you enjoyed this video. For now, I leave you with some clips of my beautiful town of San Miguel de Allende. That's right, there actually is a Starbucks in San Miguel de Allende. Feel free to subscribe and like this video, and thank you very much.